Okay, here's a thought. What if everything we thought we knew, like really knew about human history, was wrong? What if ancient people weren't just clever? What if they had help? Maybe from, I don't know, somewhere else. Welcome, everyone, to Cool, Weird, and Possible. This is where we dive into the quirkiest corners of science, futurism, and yeah, definitely those wild what-if scenarios that kind of keep us up at night. Today, we're doing a really deep dive into some ancient civilizations, the ones that left behind these like baffling clues, things that still completely puzzle us. We're talking huge stone cities just swallowed by jungles, these colossal statues moved in ways we can barely wrap our heads around, and writing systems. Totally silent. Nobody can read them.
Right. And our mission today is sort of twofold. We want to unpack the scientific understanding, what the evidence tells us about these incredible societies and why they seemingly vanish or change so drastically. But we also want to, honestly look at the less conventional theories, the ones that try to fill in those gaps, sometimes in, well, pretty strange ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when you see the sheer scale of some of this stuff, you can't help but ask, right? Is this just unbelievable human ingenuity pushed to its absolute limit? Or could there possibly, maybe, have been something else going on? We've pulled together a whole bunch of sources for this, articles, research papers, and some really great notes that you, our listeners, sent in. So, yeah, let's unpack this. And where better to kick things off than with a civilization famous for, like, an incredible calendar system and a collapse that still feels, well, baffling. The Maya.
Okay, the Maya. Their heartland was Mesoamerica, think modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador. They were around for a really long time, flourishing from about 2000 BCE onwards.
And that classic period, right? Roughly 250 to 900 CE. Just extraordinary. They developed this incredibly complex hieroglyphic writing, built amazing cities, those huge pyramids, observatories. Their understanding of math and astronomy is still, frankly, stunning.
Absolutely. Which makes the big mystery, their classic period decline, even more striking. Around 900 CE, you see many of these major thriving cities just largely abandoned. Populations plummeted. So the question isn't just that it happened, but how? How does such a sophisticated society fragment so quickly, seemingly across such a wide area?
And their knowledge, I mean, the concept of zero, way ahead of many other cultures, and calendars predicting eclipses and stuff centuries out. How did they nail that kind of precision with, the tools we assume they had?
Well, the scientific consensus now for the classic Maya decline really points to a nasty convergence of pressures. We have really strong paleoclimatic evidence, often from analyzing things like stalagmites in caves.
Like reading tree rings, but in stone.
Sort of, yeah. It shows evidence of severe multi-year megadroughts hitting the region again and again, particularly between about 800 and 930 AD.
Okay, so not just a dry summer. We're talking decades-long devastating droughts.
Exactly. Crippling agriculture, collapsing water systems, and this huge environmental stress seems to have been amplified by other things we see in the archaeological record. Increasing warfare between the different city-states, maybe overpopulation straining resources in some areas, definite signs of social unrest. And what's really interesting is how that climate stress likely ripped through the system. See, Maya rulers, the kings, their power was often tied to a claim of divine connection. They were supposed to ensure prosperity, bring the rains, guarantee good harvests.
Ah, okay. So when the rains didn't come for decades.
Precisely. Despite all the rituals, all the prayers, people likely lost faith in their rulers, faith in the divine order they represented. That probably fueled the unrest, the conflicts, and led to people just abandoning these big centers. There's also some thought that maybe rulers were pouring resources into warfare or monuments instead of shoring up vital things like reservoirs when things got tough.
Wow. So it's like an environmental crisis that triggers a political and a spiritual crisis, unraveling everything. Not just thirst, but a complete loss of confidence.
That seems to be the picture emerging from the evidence. And it's important to remember, it wasn't like one single lights-out moment across the whole Maya world. Different cities rose and fell at different times, and crucially, the Maya people didn't vanish. Their descendants are still there today with rich, vibrant cultures. The last independent Maya state actually held out until 1697, centuries after those classic cities were reclaimed by the jungle.
Whoa, okay, 1697. That really reframes it. The classic collapse was more like a transformation, a shift away from those specific urban centers, not an ending.
Exactly. And as for their advanced knowledge, the astronomy, the calendar that seems to be the result of centuries, literally centuries, of meticulous observation and careful record keeping, their math, including zero, developed logically to support the complex calculations they needed for trade, for building those incredible structures, and for their astronomical predictions.
Okay. The scientific picture makes sense. Drought, war, social upheaval, long-term observation. But still, that image of huge, sophisticated cities just emptying out, it feels so dramatic. Does the science fully capture that, or does it leave a little room for that nagging what-if feeling?
It offers a really robust, evidence-based framework for why things broke down: environmental collapse, political instability, loss of faith. These are powerful forces. But maybe it's the sheer visual drama, grand cities lost in the jungle, those beautiful, partly unreadable glyphs that keeps that door open for other ideas in, the popular imagination. And yeah, those alternative theories, the ones you sometimes see floated, they often latch onto that advanced knowledge, the dramatic decline, and suggest, well, maybe it hints at something beyond typical human development for that time: alien contact, lost technology, that sort of thing. They point to the gaps we do still have in the record.
So the mystery isn't really a lack of a scientific explanation. Maybe it's just that the explanation, however solid, doesn't feel quite as epic or maybe complete as the mystery itself feels.
You could certainly look at it that way. Science builds its case on the available evidence, and that evidence points strongly towards this complex mix of environmental and social factors. But yeah, the allure of the unknown, the truly strange, it's powerful.
Okay, let's pivot dramatically. From steamy jungles to one of the most remote places on Earth, Easter Island, Rapa Nui.
Right. Tiny volcanic island way out in the Pacific, over 2,000 miles from Chile. Settled by Polynesian voyagers, we think around 1200 CE. Incredible navigators.
And everyone knows it for one thing, the moai. Those absolutely incredible giant stone statues, heads and torsos mostly, nearly 900 of them, carved between roughly 1100 and 1680 CE.
And some are truly enormous, up to 82 tons.
82 tons. That's just mind-boggling. How did a small, isolated population on an island that wasn't exactly bursting with resources, using only stone tools, how did they quarry, carve, and then move these things, these multi-ton giants, across the island, and then stand them up?
It is the question, isn't it? And it sparked decades of research and experimentation. The prevailing scientific view is that it was achieved through really ingenious engineering, simple mechanics, and a massive amount of coordinated human labor. The statues, the moai, were mostly carved directly out of the volcanic tuff in a single quarry. Then, the thinking goes, they were likely walked upright.
Walked? You mean like shuffle them along, standing up?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Imagine using ropes, teams of people pulling side to side, rocking the statue, making it sort of pivot an inch forward. It sounds wild, but this method has actually been replicated successfully in modern experiments. It takes a lot of people, a lot of coordination, and the right technique.
I mean, I've seen recreations of that, and yeah, it works on flat ground over short distances, but moving an 80-ton statue miles, maybe uphill, just with ropes and people rocking it, it still seems, I don't know. That's where it gets really interesting and hard to fully picture without, like, modern cranes.
Oh, it was undeniably a monumental undertaking, a huge technical challenge requiring incredible social organization, planning, and sheer human power. But the evidence suggests it was achievable, though incredibly difficult. There's actually archaeologist Sonia Hawa who's undertaking this immense project right now to try and carbon date all 900 moai to get a much clearer timeline.
Wow, dating all 900. That's commitment.
It really is. Now, the other big mystery there is the decline. When Europeans, specifically the Dutch, arrived in 1722, they found a much smaller population than you'd expect, living on an island that was largely deforested. What happened?
The trees, right. Did they chop them all down to use as rollers or levers for the statues? That's the story you always hear.
That's definitely a leading theory. That unsustainable deforestation possibly linked to statue-moving logistics, but maybe also just general resource use led to ecological collapse. Loss of timber for canoes, soil erosion impacting agriculture, maybe bird populations crashing. That makes survival incredibly tough. There's also strong evidence suggesting that internal conflict, warfare between different clans or groups on the island, played a significant role in the societal breakdown and population decline. Maybe resource scarcity fueled that conflict.
So, again, potential mix. Environmental overshoot leading to resource scarcity, possibly sparking conflict.
That's the picture supported by archaeology. The deforestation is clear, there are changes in settlements, signs of conflict like fortified caves, but naturally for those seeking explanations beyond the, let's say, terrestrial. The sheer scale of the Moai, their eerie presence on that remote island, the how did they move them, a question. It definitely fuels those alternative ideas. You hear theories about, needing alien technology to lift them, or maybe the island is a remnant of a lost continent like Mu or Lemuria with advanced tech. Eric von Daniken was big on the Moai and ancient astronauts. Some point to linear features on the island as possible ancient runways.
It does seem to be a pattern, doesn't it? When human achievement looks almost impossibly difficult for the presumed time and technology, the mind jumps to outside help, aliens, lost civilizations, something extraordinary.
It's a very common trope in interpreting ancient mysteries. Archaeologists push back, arguing that while the feats were immense, they were within human capabilities with sufficient organization and ingenuity. They stress that the alternative theories lack solid evidence and often, maybe unintentionally, underestimate what non-Western ancient peoples were capable of achieving.
Okay, let's jump again. Different continent, different kind of mystery. South Asia, the Indus Valley civilization. Huge cities, incredible planning, but silent.
The Indus Valley or Harappan civilization, yeah, one of the world's great early urban societies, flourishing roughly 3300 to 1300 BCE in modern-day Pakistan and northwest India, huge area.
And their cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, they were just astonishing for that time. We're talking grid layout, standardized bricks, weights, measures, and really sophisticated water management, like covered drainage systems that were probably better than many European cities had thousands of years later.
The level of organization is staggering. But the biggest mystery, the most frustrating one perhaps, is their script. We have thousands of examples, mostly on these small, beautifully carved stone seals, but we can't read it.
Nothing.
Still undeciphered. Their language, their history recorded in their own words, their literature, their beliefs, it's all locked away. We know them by their pots and bricks, but not by their thoughts.
Wow. It's like finding this incredibly advanced lost city, and they left behind libraries full of books, but they're all in a code nobody can crack. What are we missing?
It's arguably the single most important undeciphered script left in the world. And, to familiar story here, the Indus Valley civilization also went through a major transformation. Around 1900 BCE, the big urban centers began to decline, eventually being abandoned. Why that happened is the other great Indus mystery.
Don't tell me. Drought.
Well, yeah, actually. Similar to the Maya situation, recent, pretty compelling research points strongly towards climate change again. Detailed studies of rainfall patterns, often from lake sediments and things like that, show evidence of what researchers call 3 big drought periods, hitting the region between about 4,200 and 3,900 years ago. And these weren't short dry spells. Each one could last anywhere from 25 to maybe 90 years. So we're talking centuries of recurring, intense water stress impacting the Indus River system and agriculture.
90 years of drought. How do you even survive that? So it wasn't a sudden collapse, but more like a slow squeeze?
Exactly. It looks less like a sudden event and more like a long-term environmental shift. And the archaeology suggests the Indus people adapted, at least initially, over maybe 200 years. They seem to have gradually moved away from the massive, densely populated cities towards smaller, more dispersed villages, probably focusing more on drought-resistant crops. But this shift seems to have come with a loss of complexity. We see evidence for a decline in the really fine craftsmanship they were known for, a shrinking of their long-distance trade networks. The unified urban civilization essentially faded away by around 3,600 years ago.
It's just striking how often climate change pops up as this major destabilizing force for these ancient superpowers, a real recurring theme.
It's a profound lesson from the past, absolutely. Now, other factors might have contributed to and maybe shifts in the course of the Indus River itself, disrupting agriculture and trade routes, or perhaps external pressures, though evidence for large-scale invasion is debated. But the climate evidence is getting stronger.
Okay, but the script, why is that so tough to crack? Is he just waiting for the right genius or the right discovery?
It's a combination of frustrating factors. We think it's probably a logosyllabic script, meaning some signs represent whole words, others represent syllables. It might represent a language from the Dravidian family, which is still spoken in South India, or maybe an ancestor of those languages. But the absolute biggest roadblock is the lack of a bilingual text. Like The Rosetta Stone was key for Egyptian hieroglyphs because it had the same text in Greek, which scholars could read. We just haven't found anything like that for the Indus script. No known language alongside it.
So no key, no cipher.
Precisely. And the inscriptions themselves are problematic. They're almost all really short. The average is only about 5 signs long. It's incredibly hard to figure out grammar or complex meaning from tiny snippets like that. Some researchers have even debated if it was a full writing system capable of recording complex narratives, or maybe more of a system of symbols for trade, like identifying ownership, or for religious or ritual purposes. But the number of distinct signs suggests it was likely more than just simple labels.
I saw something about using AI, trying to find patterns, and someone offered a big prize.
Yeah, absolutely. Computational linguists are using machine learning algorithms to analyze the sequences of signs, looking for statistical patterns that might hint at underlying grammatical structure. It's a promising avenue. And yes, recently, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu in India announced a $1 million prize for successful decipherment, partly fueled by claims that some Indus signs resemble symbols found in ancient Tamil graffiti, suggesting a possible linguistic link, though that link itself is debated.
If we connect this back,
Yeah.
it's just so tantalizing, isn't it? We know so much about their plumbing, their city grids, their trade goods,
Yeah.
but we know almost nothing about what they thought, what stories they told, what they call themselves. That script holds a whole dimension of their world that's just silent.
Yeah, it's like walking through incredibly sophisticated ruins, but everyone's mute, and all the signs are in a language you can't comprehend. A vast, silent library.
It really makes you think. And speaking of things that mess with our nice, neat timelines of human progress, the sources mentioned a few other sites that are just, well, kind of weird and way older than you'd expect.
Oh yeah, like Göbekli Tepe
Mhm.
in southeastern Turkey. This
Yeah.
place is it fundamentally rewrites the textbooks. It's over 11,000 years old.
11,000. That's what, 6,000 years before Stonehenge? Before the pyramids?
Exactly. And here's the absolute mind bender. It appears to have been built by hunter-gatherers, people who hadn't yet developed agriculture or settled villages in the way we usually think of them, people who hadn't invented pottery yet. It totally flips the script on the idea that you needed farming, surplus food, and settled populations before you could organize the labor to build massive, complex stone structures.
So nomadic or semi-nomadic groups were quarrying, moving, and carving these huge T-shaped pillars, some weighing 10 tons or more, and arranging them in circles using just stone tools. How?
Why? We think it was a major ritual or ceremonial center, a gathering place. Maybe a cathedral on a hill, as one archaeologist famously put it. They clearly understood basic geometry to lay out these structures. Recent work suggests maybe some people lived nearby year-round, but the main monumental phase seems pre-agricultural.
It's like finding out people invented the internet before they invented the telephone. It just scrambles the expected order of things.
It forces a major rethink about the capabilities and social organization of early human groups. And not too far away, also in Turkey, you've got Çatalhöyük, often called the world's first city or one of the earliest large settlements. Dates from about 7100 to 5700 BCE.
Okay, still incredibly ancient, but maybe less shocking after Göbekli Tepe.
Still plenty weird, though. This place also seems to predate widespread farming in the area. Definitely predates writing, wheels, metal tools. And the layout is bizarre. It was like a dense honeycomb of mud brick houses packed right against each other. No streets.
No streets. How did people get around?
They walked across the roofs and entered their houses through ladders down openings in the ceilings.
Through the roof. Seriously, no front doors.
Nope. Rooftop access only. The archaeology suggests a surprisingly egalitarian society, not much evidence of hierarchy, and here's the dark humor bit you might appreciate. They buried their dead under the floors, inside the house.
Wait, like right under the living room rug? That's
What?
intimate. Keeping grandma close, I guess.
Wow, definitely a different approach to remembrance. And then, just to show complex societies were popping up all over, you have Caral Supe in Peru, much less famous than the Incas or Maya, but its pyramids are as old as the earliest ones in Egypt.
Pyramids in South America as old as Egypt. You always hear Egypt, Egypt, Egypt for the oldest big monuments.
It really highlights how these major developments, large-scale construction, urban living, happened independently in different parts of the world, much earlier than we sometimes realize. Caral was overlooked for a while, partly because they didn't seem to use much pottery early on, which archaeologists often rely on for dating. It just adds another layer to this global story of early complexity.
And circling back to the silent stories, the Indus script isn't the only one we're locked out of, is it?
Oh, not by a long shot. The ancient world left behind several frustratingly mute writing systems. There's Linear A from the Minoan civilization on Crete around 1800 to 1450 BCE.
Yeah.
We know it's related to Linear B, which was deciphered and turned out to be an early form of Greek. But Linear A itself, still unreadable, probably used for admin and religious texts.
Another one waiting for its Rosetta Stone moment.
And then there's the Etruscan script from ancient Italy, roughly 700 to 300 BCE. This one's extra tantalizing because the Etruscans heavily influenced the Romans, and their alphabet is the ancestor of the Latin alphabet we use today. So we can actually pronounce Etruscan words. We know what the letters sound like.
But we don't know what the words mean.
Largely, no. We understand bits and pieces, mostly from short funerary inscriptions or labels, but we can't really read their texts. We don't grasp the grammar or vocabulary well enough, so their culture, their history, mostly comes to us through the lens of the Greeks and Romans who wrote about them, often critically. It really makes you stop and think. What vital knowledge, what unique perspectives, what stories from these complex, fascinating cultures are just gone, lost to us, because we can't decipher these symbols. It's a huge, humbling blank spot in the human story.
Yeah, vast chapters just ripped out, or written in invisible ink.
Ugh.
Okay, so we've covered some seriously baffling ground. Advanced civilizations that hit the skids, engineering feats that look borderline impossible, languages we can see but can't hear, sites that throw our timelines into chaos, and for every solid scientific explanation involving drought, deforestation, clever engineering, human resilience, social dynamics, there's that persistent whisper, right? The one that says, yeah, but what about aliens? What about lost tech? What if there's a hidden truth they don't want us to know?
That's the fundamental tension, isn't it, when you dive into these ancient mysteries? On one side, you have the careful, rigorous work of archaeologists, paleoclimatologists, linguists, epigraphers, building explanations piece by piece based on tangible evidence, environmental data, comparative studies, acknowledging the gaps and uncertainties.
And on the other side, you have the alternative theorists, maybe inspired by shows like Ancient Aliens or certain books, who look at the same evidence, especially the really spectacular or puzzling bits, and feel like the conventional explanations just aren't enough. They don't match the grandeur or the weirdness. So they invoke something extraordinary: extraterrestrials, vanished supercivilizations, forgotten physics.
Right. And it's important to mention that these skeptical or mainstream scientific view counters that these alternative theories often rely on cherry-picking data, misinterpreting iconography, or simply lacking verifiable evidence. They also argue that attributing these achievements to aliens or lost tech can sometimes implicitly downplay the incredible ingenuity and capabilities of the actual ancient people involved: the Maya, the Rapa Nui, the Indus builders. The scientific perspective emphasizes that while the mysteries are absolutely real and fascinating, the ongoing process of research is providing increasingly detailed answers, even if those answers involve complex social factors and environmental change rather than, little green men.
It feels like you've got the scientific reality, which honestly is pretty amazing in itself, understanding the depth of human history and capability, and then you've got this powerful psychological pull. That desire for something cooler, weirder, more possible in a sci-fi sense. The allure of the truly sensational secret.
The human imagination loves a grand, unexplained mystery. Absolutely. But the documented reality of what ancient peoples achieved, the societies they built, the challenges they faced, and sometimes overcame, sometimes succumbed to, that's a profoundly spectacular story in its own right.
So stepping back from all these specific cases, what does it all mean? What are the big takeaways for us looking back at these distant, mysterious civilizations?
Well, we've definitely journeyed through some incredible highs, stunning achievements, brilliant minds, and some devastating lows, like those collapses and disappearances, not to mention the enduring silence of those scripts.
I think one key takeaway is just the sheer spectrum of human potential these civilizations reveal. Incredible creativity, organizational genius, deep understanding of their environments, but also profound vulnerability. They show us that even complex, seemingly stable societies can be fragile, susceptible to environmental shifts, internal conflicts, maybe even loss of faith or social cohesion.
And the fact that mysteries remain isn't a failure of science, right? It's more like fuel. It drives new discoveries, new ways of looking. You mentioned new tech. Absolutely. Things like LiDAR bouncing lasers through jungle canopies to reveal hidden Maya cities nobody knew were there. Ancient DNA analysis is revolutionizing our understanding of population movements and connections. And yes, using AI and machine learning to tackle things like undeciphered scripts, the toolkit is constantly expanding.
That's cool. So the story's not finished.
Not at all. And understanding these past transformations, especially the collapses linked to climate like the Maya and Indus Valley, Well, it feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it? It offers some sobering lessons about sustainability, resource management, and the potential consequences of environmental change for our own complex global civilization.
Yeah, a definite echo from the past there. Makes you think.
Ultimately, studying these ancient mysteries reminds us that our picture of the human past is always incomplete, always evolving. It's not a closed book, it's an active investigation, filled with puzzles that rightly continue to inspire awe, spark curiosity, and fuel debate. It keeps us humble about what we really know.
So we've taken this deep dive. The Maya collapse, the Rapa Nui moving mountains of stone, the Indus silence, those timeline-bending sites like Göbekli Tepe and Çatalhöyük with its unique interior design choices.
We've seen how science offers compelling, evidence-backed stories, built bit by bit. Yet the sheer scale, the unanswered questions, the things that just feel weird, they definitely leave room for wonder. And yeah, maybe for entertaining those cool, weird, and possible thoughts, too.
So for you listening, after hearing about all these incredible, enigmatic peoples and places, which one grabs you the most? Which ancient mystery just sticks in your head? Is it the Maya calendar, the Moai staring out to sea, that silent Indus script?
And thinking about that mystery that captivates you, what do you think is the key? Is it more digging, more technology, or maybe just looking at the clues we already have in a completely different way?
Do you lean towards the intricate scientific explanations, finding the human story profound enough? Or do you think there's still a truly cool, weird, and possible explanation out there just waiting for us to find it?
Maybe take a moment after this, look up some images online. Göbekli Tepe's pillars, the Moai on Easter Island, those tiny, intricate Indus seals. Seeing them really brings the scale and the mystery to life.
Yeah, definitely do that. And keep pondering. Let us know your thoughts. Let's keep exploring this amazing, puzzling universe together.